What's up, everyone? Ronnie here. Today, we're going to dive deep into one of the most misunderstood, overhyped, and honestly misrepresented topics in real estate right now. The truth about subject to and seller financing deals in Washington state. If you've been scrolling TikTok, YouTube, or Instagram, you've probably seen, everybody out there talking about this. Someone say, just take over someone's 2% mortgage and boom, instant rental property. No bank, no problem. And yeah, that sounds amazing. And I wish that it worked that way. But the real story is a whole lot deeper. So today I'm breaking down what Subto actually is, how it works in Washington, the risks nobody ever talks about, the emotional side sellers face, the legal frameworks behind the scenes, and how to structure these deals safely so they don't blow up later. If you're even thinking about creative finance, then this is the episode you want. So before we get into it, if you appreciate content like this, hit the like button and subscribe to the channel, share it. I post videos, I try to cut through the noise and give you the real breakdown, buying, selling, investing, and building wealth through real estate. It's not financial advice, but it really helps the channel grow. It helps me make more content like this for you, and I appreciate it. So, all right, let's get into it. First, let's clear up what subject to actually means. Subject to simply means this. You take ownership of a property, the seller's existing mortgage stays in their name, you take over the payments, and the lender isn't formally involved in the deal. That's the essence of Subto. That's the entire mechanical core. But here's where the confusion comes in. Subject to is not the same as assuming someone's loan. A loan assumption is approved through the bank. Subto is not. Subto lives outside of the bank. And because of that, it sits directly on the top of a legal framework created by the Germain Act of 1982. Under that act, almost every modern mortgage has a due on sale clause. And that clause gives the lender the right, not the obligation, but the right to call the entire loan due if ownership transfers title without their approval. This is big. They don't always do it. They don't do it every situation, but they absolutely can. A lot of people online say banks never enforce due on sale, and that sounds nice. It's comforting, but it's not accurate. Internal reviews from lenders summarized by FHFA in 2023 and 2024 show that enforcement depends on triggers, delinquency, occupancy, issues, and this is the one almost nobody talks about, insurance mismatches. The number one trigger for due on sale isn't actually the deed being recorded. It's the insurance policy flagging a brand new insured person who isn't the borrower. In Washington, insurers update the lender automatically when policies change. If you don't structure the insurance correctly, the lender system flags it. If the system flags it, a human reviews the file. When a human reviews the file, the deal is no longer invisible. So this is big. Insurance is the silent alarm in the Subto world. Now, let's talk about the seller, because this part is widely under-discussed online. Sellers don't agree to subject to because they think it's an exotic financial strategy, right? They say yes because they have a problem they can't solve. They can't solve it through traditional means, at least. Maybe they don't have enough equity to sell. Maybe they can't afford repairs. Maybe they're behind on payments. Maybe they're relocating suddenly. Maybe they lost a job. Maybe they're going through a divorce or an unexpected death in the family. Maybe they just need a clean exit, right? But here's the emotional reality. The seller is giving you the deed while keeping the debt. They are trusting you with their credit score, their financial stability, their reputation with the bank, and in some cases, their ability to qualify for another home in the future. For a lot of sellers, that is terrifying. They may not say it out loud, but they feel it. And Washington lenders, they report directly to credit bureaus. So if the buyer misses a payment, the seller takes the hit, not the buyer. That's important. You have to respect that emotional risk is real. If you try to minimize it or gloss over it, the entire deal becomes unstable. And I'm not against these, but just clarity. Subto requires trust, and trust requires transparency, right? Now, let's switch to the buyer side, because buyers often underestimate how much responsibility they're actually taking on. A lot of new investors think Subto is just taking over a mortgage payment, but you're not just taking the mortgage, you're taking taxes, you're taking insurance, you're taking HOA obligations, you're taking maintenance, deferred repairs, tenant challenges, and any liens attached to the property. In Washington, you're also dealing with REIT, real estate excise tax, which applies on almost every transfer of ownership. Many people teaching Subto online have never done a deal in Washington, so they have no idea how REIT affects these structures. But it's a real cost. It's part of the deal, right? Like, you can't forget that. And on top of all that, you need reserves, because Subto works great until the water heater blows up, or the roof starts leaking, or the HVAC dies, or the tenant stops paying, or the market shifts. If you stretch yourself thin on a Subto deal, the margin for error is zero. And the person who feels the consequences first, the seller, then the bank, then you. Now, let's talk about what actually triggers due on sale in Washington. Because contrary to online myths, banks aren't sitting around hunting for Subto deals. They don't have departments dedicated to catching creative finance investors. What they do have are automated servicing systems that look for changes, right? If a deed transfer shows up in third-party data, the system flags it. If the insurance policy changes unexpectedly, the system flags it. If the loan becomes delinquent, even by 15 days, the system flags it. If the home was supposed to be owner-occupied under an FHA or a VA loan, and suddenly it looks like a rental, the system, flags it. Once the loan is flagged, a human servicer looks at it, right? And once a human is involved, you no longer have the luxury of flying under the radar. This is sort of a gray area that's being operated in here. That doesn't mean Subto is doomed. It just means Subto requires competence. So let's shift gears to seller financing. And let me start by saying seller financing can be incredible. It avoids the due on sale entirely. The seller becomes the bank. You negotiate everything: interest rate down, payment, term length, balloon payment, amortization. There's other things, though. Many buyers forget that seller financing is still a legal obligation. And Washington is a judicial foreclosure state when it comes to most private notes. That means if you default, the seller can foreclose in court and add attorney fees, penalties, costs, you name it. And sellers are human beings. They have emotions. If they don't understand their own note, or they get confused, or they get scared or angry, the whole thing can turn into a legal mess, right? People think seller financing is the safe, easy version of creative financing, but it's only safe and easy if it's structured correctly. So let's talk about how to actually structure these deals safely in Washington. Always do your own due diligence first here, guys. But the first thing you should do, and this is non-negotiable in my opinion, is use third-party loan servicer. Do not manually send payments to the seller. Do not Cash App them. Do not Venmo them. Do not Apple Pay. Use a legitimate servicing company that collects the payment, escrows, taxes, and insurance, and sends statements to both parties. This removes 95% of disputes and protects the seller's peace of mind. So next, fix the insurance correctly. This is the step beginners skip the most. You need a policy. You need a policy that lists the lender as mortgagee, lists the seller as additional insured, reflects the correct occupancy type, so renter, whatever, protects the property appropriately. If you mess up insurance, you raise a red flag. Fixing insurance fixes most problems. Insurance is huge these days, everyone. Next, record the deed. Hiding the transfer is not a strategy. Being transparent and documenting everything is what stabilizes the deal. And in Washington, escrow companies are used to handling these situations. It's not new for them. This is their job. Use escrow teams who know creative financing. Don't try to DIY this, something this important. This is major. You also want a performance clause, right? So this clause establishes that payments must be made on time. Documentation that must be shared. Taxes must be handled. Insurance must be maintained, and everyone must be informed, right? So keep this in mind. A performance clause turns fear into structure, and you need all this transparency and, of course, reserves. Let me say it plainly. If the only way your sub-2 deal works is if nothing goes wrong, it's not a deal. It's desperate. Now, let me give you the warning signs. The red flags experienced investors run from, okay? Run if the seller doesn't fully understand what's happening. Run if you have no reserves. Run if the property needs major repairs immediately. Run if the loan is FHA or VA and occupancy questions exist. Run if the HOA dues destroy cash flow. Run if the local municipality has strict rental rules. Run if the entire deal is being forced through a script instead of reality, right? Sub-2 should be strategic, not desperate. So now let's talk about situations where subject to actually works beautifully in Washington. Because this isn't, like I said, I'm not against this. It's just you got to do it right. It works when the seller has a low interest mortgage and needs a quick, clean solution. It works when the buyer intends to hold long term. It works when the property cash flows from day one. It works when the buyer is financially stable. You know, vet buyers here. It works when the closing is done properly through escrow. It works when the insurance is structured correctly. It works when the seller feels secure. It works when the documents are thorough, and it works when everyone understands the deal. So here's a real scenario that went smoothly. A seller had a 3.1% mortgage, low equity, and needed to move to Spokane, right, to care for a family member. Listing the home would have required repairs they couldn't afford. A sub-2 buyer stepped in, structured the deal through escrow, used a third-party servicer, corrected the insurance, paid REIT, and took over responsibly. The buyer got a great rental. The seller got peace of mind. Everyone won. That's the kind of deal you want to do here. Those are the kinds we can imagine working. Compare that deal where the seller agreed quickly but didn't fully understand their mortgage would remain on their credit. The buyer made a single late payment. The seller panicked and called the lender. The lender reviewed the transfer. The deal blew up. The relationship blew up, and both sides walked away hurt. I mean, that's the emotional reality here, not the TikTok reality. So here's the bottom line, okay? Subject to and seller financing are not loopholes. They're not shortcuts. They're not hacks. They're strategies. Powerful strategies, sophisticated strategies, strategies that work best when you respect them, though. And when you're transparent, structured, and competent, these deals create opportunities that most people will never access. They create win. They create win-wins. They create exists for stuck sellers. They create long-term holds for smart buyers. But if you rush or cut corners or hide things or ignore the dynamics or rely on scripts instead of understanding, that's when things fall apart. So if you're in Washington and you're considering doing a sub-2 or seller finance deal, reach out. Let's walk through it. Let's make sure it's structured in a way that protects everyone involved and sets the deal up for long-term success. I'm here to help navigate the real rules of the game, not the internet version, okay? You need lawyers for this stuff. That's the reality too. I mean, that's just it, you know? So if this episode's helped you understand creative finance on a deeper level, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe. It tells me to keep making breakdowns like this, honest, detailed, built for real people doing real deals or people that are curious about it. So Thanks for watching. I'll see you on the next one.